ranking the final boss of every From Software Souls DLC. So to start things off, we have Sinh, the Slumbering Dragon, in last place. Now, I think Sinh is a great fight. I honestly think he was the best dragon fight for a long time until mid-year came out. Yes, I think he's better than Calamite. Now, the reason Sinh is this low on the list, or last place on this list, isn't because I think he's a flawed boss or a bad boss. I think he's a great dragon boss. I just think he's a bit out of his element. Now, his fight isn't perfect, I want to say. I think he does fly around a bit too much. And the fact your weapon constantly breaks while fighting him can be very annoying. But outside of those two minor factors, I do think he's essentially a perfect fight. But I just think he's way outclassed compared to the other final DLC bosses. The best boss in each From Software DLC is usually the final boss, at least to me. So him he just outclassed, man. It sucks. I literally like him. I think he's really underrated, but I just can't put him any higher. So next up we have Manus, an awesome boss. Him being this low is not an insult to him at all. I remember watching videos on him when Dark Souls 1 came out, and when Dark Souls 1 Remastered came out too. When that came out, the conversation around him kind of resurfaced. Everyone was talking about how hard he is. I'm pretty sure he's the first like beast kind of monster From Software ever made, and they obviously excelled at it. He was a very hard boss at the time. I remember people were saying he was impossible. Even right now, I struggle on him a lot. Like, he is not an easy boss even today. The only thing holding him down, I would say, is Dark Souls 1 mechanics. I think it's very complex for Dark Souls 1. If I'm not mistaken, I think he has the most complex moveset and the most moveset out of any Dark Souls 1 boss. But at the end of the day, I think there's only so much they could have done with Dark Souls 1 mechanics for him. I think he's only held back by his mechanics, so he could have been like 1 or 2 spots higher. He's an amazing fight, has a lot of spectacle for a Dark Souls 1 fight, great moveset, good OST, good lore, like everything about him is amazing. I just feel like he's being slightly held back by Dark Souls 1 mechanics, and he's just out of his element a little bit. The bosses on this list are all fantastic. From Software cooks with their DLC bosses without fail. I'd say almost all of them are S tier. Manus and Sinh would be like B to A tier, I don't really know. But almost everyone else is S tier, so it's not really an insult to them. I just think the ones above are just simply better. 6, I have the Ivory King. Honestly, bro, it breaks my heart to put him this low because I adore this fight. It's one of my favorites in the franchise. But Soul's final boss are just way too good, so that's why he is here. Now, I think Ivory King himself is essentially perfect. The problem with his fight comes from the first phase. I think the very first time doing the first phase, it's absolutely excellent. Has so much spectacle, so much hype behind it. But I think the more you play it and the more you're stuck on it, the more boring it can get, and it can feel incredibly long, which takes away from the overall fight. But like I said, I think the Ivory King himself is basically perfect, starting from his entrance, which is one of the coolest entrances ever, from his moveset to his fight. I think literally everything about him is perfect. If he had a slightly better first phase, he could be 2 spots higher, but his first phase does slightly bring him down, even though I think he's a fantastic boss overall. Number 5, I have Sister Friede. Okay, hear me out. I love Sister Friede. I know she may be a little too low for some people, but I generally do like her a lot. I just like the other bosses above her more. My thing with Friede is I love her third phase. It's arguably one of my favorite phases in all of FromSoft. Well, what brings her down on this list for me is her second phase. Her second phase really feels like a drag. I don't feel like her and Father Oriental have a lot of good synergy together, so I kind of feel myself rushing through the first phase so I can get the second phase over with. So I don't enjoy her first 2 phases, which brings down the overall fight. I don't think the first phase is poorly designed. I have fun with it, but the dread of going through the second phase makes me not enjoy it more. Her third phase is absolute perfection though, and that's why she's high on the list. It makes me sad she can't be any higher, but that's how it is. Number 4, I have Fume Knight. Now, listen, I know it's a controversial take to have Fume Knight this high on the list, especially to have him over Sister Friede, but I just love Fume Knight, man. And I get that Dark Souls 3 obviously, very obviously, has way better gameplay than Dark Souls 2. That's just a fact. Dark Souls 3 gameplay is just a perfected Dark Souls gameplay. But I just don't think Fume Knight suffers from any of the issues that Dark Souls 2 bosses have. I have personally never once suffered from bad hitboxes while fighting him, even if I have a low amount of ADP. Another thing with him is I just love his moveset. I feel like his moveset is very complex for Dark Souls 2. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong, but I think he's the first From Software Souls boss to have two different phases with completely two different movesets. And both his movesets are extremely fun to fight. They have varying moves that make the fight engaging. He always keeps you on your toes. He does a lot of damage. And the main reason I would say he's this high on the list, I just consider him to be an all-around perfect fight where I do have a flaw with every fight under him. So that's why he's number 4 on this list. Number 3, I have the Orphan of Kos. Oh my god, I love the Orphan of Kos so much. He is a top 5 Souls boss for me and my favorite boss in Bloodborne. I usually believe the DLC bosses tend to be the best bosses, especially the final DLC bosses. And Orphan of Kos just meets that every single time, man. I love this fight. He generally does feel like the perfect conclusion to Bloodborne for me. Everything about his fight is perfect. I've replayed Bloodborne more times than I can count, so I've been playing it since 2016. I find the game extremely replayable, great weapons, great armor sets, just a lot of different stuff you want to try. So I always come back to this game. And Orphan of Kos is like one of the bosses that still gets me excited. Even though I've fought him like 15 times, his moveset still excites me. I still have a fun time fighting him. I don't think I have ever fought him and was bored or was annoyed, even though he's a challenging fight. He's an extremely fun and fair fight. Even outside of his fantastic moveset, great difficulty, and amazing boss arena, you can just feel the build up to him. He has one of the best build ups in the whole Souls franchise. Walking through the fishing hamlet after fighting Lady Maria and feeling that dark and tragic atmosphere, everything about the area feels heavy. You know you're walking into the big tragedy that happened in the fishing hamlet. And when you finally reach the fight, it meets the hype every single time, man. Like, I never skip Orphan of Kos's cutscene. It's just so amazing. It's a fight that I always look forward to. And even though he's number 3 on this list, I honestly could see him being higher. He's been my favorites on some days, but today I'm feeling at number 3. Oh, number 2, I have the promised console Radahn. Now, this is by far the most controversial pick on my list. If you have seen any of my videos before, you know I really like Radahn, but I understand why people don't like him. Now, there's a lot of reasons I understand people wouldn't like him, and we'll get into those, but I just love the fight. I think it's amazing. Now, I want to start by saying people can 100% not like Radahn. I'm not here to change anyone's opinions, but I'm here to explain why the problems that people have with him never bothered me personally, and why I think some of the problems people have are definitely exaggerated with him. Okay, to start with, I want to say the performance issue, that's 100% valid. That needs to be addressed immediately by From Software, and the fact that it hasn't been addressed yet is honestly kind of concerning. A boss should not be harder because your FPS is dropping or any other reason. Now, another thing I have seen people complain about recently is his hitboxes. They say his hitboxes are longer than it looks. And even though I can agree to some extent that that is a problem, I don't think that should be a thing. That's not really fair. I haven't really personally experienced that. And another thing is, that's not a Radahn thing. Plenty of Souls bosses have movesets that are longer than what they appear. And I have really only seen people complain about it, like with Radahn. Example, Melania, her hitbox is also longer than her sword. Same with Morgott, but people don't complain about them. So I feel like even though the reasoning is valid, I feel like it is a bit hypocritical to complain about him but ignore it when every other boss does this. Not that every other boss does this, but it is quite a common thing in Elden Ring where the sword is not actually the actual hitbox and the hitbox is longer. So that's just something that I never understood. Another thing are the beaming lights. Now, the beaming lights are a weird one because personally, I'm not bothered by them. They never obscured my vision. I always have an easy time reading him. It's just a matter of his movesets. I agree, first time getting into the fight, the lights can seem like a lot. It'll be hard for you to figure out everything. But once you learn it, I don't think the lights obscure any of his attacks. Neither does Miquella's hair. So all of those are fine for me. At least I never noticed a problem. I know people that have like personal friends of mine. Obviously, they're 100% valid. But I can't really say that's a critique for me since I never suffered from that. But one complaint I do have about him is I think he goes into a second phase a bit too early. The difficulty spike between his first and second phase is obviously massive, and I feel like for this massive jump, I feel like he should go into second phase at around 50%. He goes into it around 35 and 40%. I think that needs to be reduced. But I think if those two problems are fixed, he will essentially be a perfect boss fight to me personally. And I understand if people don't like him, but to me, he's essentially perfect. Number one, I have Slave Knight Gael. Now, listen, I get it's a basic pick. I understand it, but I just feel like it's the right pick. Now, I won't talk too much about Gael as I feel like you have probably heard why he's good over 100 times by now. He's been out for 8 years, and most people agree that he is the best Souls boss. I don't personally think he's the best Souls boss, but he's definitely the best final DLC boss. I just think he's excellent. He feels like the perfect conclusion to not only Dark Souls 3, but in the entirety of the Dark Souls trilogy. His fight has the perfect amount of build up. His boss arena is amazing. It's beautiful, so atmospheric. His moveset is also amazing. His first phase feels very chaotic. It's very all over the place. His second phase is like he gains his composure. And the third phase, man, the third phase of Gael is the best phase out of any Souls boss. I never get tired of fighting him. Now, even outside of his boss fight, there's other things like his OST, like is a top 5 Souls OST for me. Probably top 3. I just never get tired of fighting Gael. I always look forward to him, no matter how many times I play Dark Souls 3, no matter how many years it's been. Gael is always a fight that gets me excited and hyped to get to. So first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone that watched the whole video. I loved making this video. And if you enjoyed it, if you could leave a like, a comment, and subscribe, especially leave a comment. My favorite part of making videos is having conversations. So making these videos and not getting a conversation out of people is honestly boring. So if you could tell me your ranking or you want to think about my reasoning or ranking, that would be amazing. Once again, thank you to everyone that watched the video. I had a blast making it.